The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Assalamu alaikum. Today is a hard day. To think about what this means to Muslims and their families across this country. We've heard people mention this, but so common. All of us have gone for walks with our family in this pandemic because there's nowhere else to go. There's places that are shut down. So you go for a walk. And to think that a family going for a walk couldn't make it home. To think that that casual walk around the block in our neighborhood would be one's last. To think that you can't walk safely down your own street. And to think about what that means for a Muslim family. Right now, people are talking to their families and saying, you know what, maybe you shouldn't go for a walk. There are people literally thinking about whether they should walk out their front door in our country. When we think about what that means, some people have said, this is not our Canada. And I think about what that means when people say, this is not our Canada. This happened in London, Ontario. I lived in London, Ontario for 5 years. I loved my time there. I think about the fact that my parents chose to make Canada our home. I love my home. I love this place. But the reality is, this is our Canada. This is our Canada. Our Canada is a place where 215 little kids were found dead in unmarked graves. Our Canada is a place where you can't walk down the streets if you wear a hijab because you will be killed. This is our Canada. We can't deny it. We can't reject that because it does no one any help. The reality is our Canada is a place of racism, of violence, of genocide of Indigenous people, and our Canada is a place where Muslims aren't safe. They aren't. They aren't safe. Muslims are not safe in this country. And Muslims wonder, I've spoken to people, they wonder how many more lives will it take? How many more families will be mauled down the street? How many more families will be killed before we do something? Innocent people were killed while praying in a place of prayer, in a masjid, in a mosque in Quebec, gunned down. A man was a Muslim man in Toronto, was knifed and killed. And both of those incidents, we know very clearly that it was directly because of hate. It was because of hate. There was so much hate towards someone that they did not know just because of who they were, because of how they prayed, because of what they looked like. That is a reality. People live with that every day. They walk the streets wondering if I will be attacked just because of the way I look, not because of an enemy that I have, or not because of someone that's got a problem with me. Will I be attacked today just because of the way I look? That is a real question people ask. Wow. What a life to live, that you've got to wonder about that. And we think about people that left violence, they fled persecution, refugees, they come to this country thinking, I'm going to be safe here. This is a place of safety. And they're not safe.
So this is what we're going to be talking about and discussing with my next guest, who's an activist, community leader, educator on comparative religion, our brother Waseem. Razvi, how are you, brother? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, brother Adi. Jazakallah khair for having me with you on the show. Alhamdulillah.
Did I leave anything out when I introduced you that you'd like to add?
No, that was already too big, I guess.
Alhamdulillah. So what is your reaction when you saw, this is now, just to make it clear, this is not a Muslim. Many people, they equate someone with a turban like this or the wrapping that the Sikhs have, specifically their tradition, and they think that's a Muslim. So this is not even a Muslim who's speaking.
Yeah.
on
That's
behalf
right, yeah.
of this terrorist attack that happened. What's your reaction to what some of the things that he was talking
So,
about?
see, I think this was just Smith saying in Canadian Parliament, and I think he's a fair voice who's raising the voice against the hatred that is happening right now as we speak in Canada. It is a fair voice that we need to appreciate, along with the voice of the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. And there are fair voices that are out there which are speaking the language that must be spoken in times of dissent, in times of depression, in times of anxiety that people are going through. So I believe it is a fair voice, but there is a lot of work and action to be done along with the words.
So what do you think we can learn from this? What do you think from what we're seeing now?
Yep.
What are the things that we want to go ahead and talk about that you think are the most important points that we should cover?
Right. I think, see, first of all, just for all the viewers out there, I'm sure everybody has come across this terrible terrorist attack that has taken place in Canada on 6th of June, Sunday, just earlier by the end of last week. But it's just good to give a quick brief to the people what has happened. What we are talking about right now is a terrible terrorist attack, a horrendous one that has shaken the entire Canadian society, as well the entire world is watching in shock and agony as to what has happened. How could somebody be so barbaric, so hate-filled, so Islamophobic that they need to go out in a truck and spot a family and drive over them, mow them under the tires of your truck? How barbaric would you be to do that exactly? Just imagine 3 generations of a family, 3 generations, the grandparent, the parents, the father and the mother, and the sister, the sibling of the injured child, a 9-year-old child. 5 members of a family were mowed down under a truck by a terrorist in Canada in broad daylight on a quiet Sunday. We're not talking about somewhere in Iraq or in Afghanistan, as the media tries to portray from time to time. We're not talking about Palestine right now. We are talking about the safe streets of Canada. This is what has exactly happened just a couple of days ago in Canada, and this is the city of London, in Canada, which we are talking about, the state of Ontario. Now,
yeah, Donna, tonight many of the
now what we want to go further from there is, who is this terrorist? What do we know about him? This is something that we may explore further into.
Yeah, that's very important, because some of the points that are very important, we're seeing. One, it's just interesting, and it's always when something like this happens, you start to, as a Muslim, you start to see many of the double standards, because the majority of time, if this was someone who had the name Ahmed or Muhammad, or just some person who was literally just mentally deranged, just got out of a mental hospital, whatever the case, he's not establishing Islam in his life, but because he somehow maybe knew a Muslim or comes from a Muslim family, but is not implementing any of the tenets of Islam, right away, his whole life will be put on display.
Very true, very true. I think it is very important that you have pointed out the double standards of media, and I would extend it to the politicians, the opportunistic politicians as well. When we see the name, it's not that the moment the name sounds Islamic, sounds Muslim, that's it. That's where the media starts its trail. That's where they start their charging. They start to do their own judgments on the face of it. They put out the face of the culprit. They put out the entire family out there. They will put out all the possible horrible things of this person. He had this in his family. He had this in his lifetime. Bringing out the most evil possible aspects of that person and blame the entire community, rather the entirety of the faith. And they start to question every single teaching of Islam. They will start to ponder on every single verse of the Quran, which talks about fighting, which talks about dealing with the politics, which talks about responding or reacting or taking a revenge. They will bisect every single aspect of Islam. But now, the moment you see that the perpetrator doesn't sound Muslim, or maybe you can even call doesn't look like a Muslim, you see the softness of the language of the media and the appropriate language of the politicians, a very cautious, very careful language. Although we appreciate what we just saw from the Canadian politicians, we really appreciate that. So I'm not really questioning their intentions there. However, I believe the discourse needs to change. The language needs to change. We cannot make generic statements that these are hate-filled attacks. Yes, it is hate-filled attack, but this hate-filled attack is Islamophobic in its nature. What are the ideologies behind these attacks? These are not happening in vacuum. When a Muslim does an attack, you try find out which school he went, which college, which university, his friends, his suburb, his locality, his teacher, who he used to watch on the television, on his laptop, which Islamic speakers he used to watch. Everyone is blamed in that attack, in that criminality. But now when there is a terrorist who doesn't happen to be Muslim and happens to be from another faith, and we'll come to that, there is no inquisitiveness. There is no query of his whereabouts. There's no query of his associations. He's like a good guy. He has always been a very nice guy. He's out there. We just don't know why he did that. So the police charges him, but shuts the case. Let me just bring out the case of the New Zealand Christchurch terrorist attack. Yes, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, we appreciate her for standing firm and rounding up the culprit, putting terror laws against him, and charging him. Great. But just one person, just one criminal, that's all. Where are his associates? Where are the terror raids on 50 houses? Where are the 500 Intelligence Bureau officers who are going to be raiding the houses of those people who radicalized this terrorist? Where are the houses being raided of those people who did the propaganda to make him an extremist? He can't just wake up one night and in the morning go out to do a terror attack. That is not how it works. Where is the entire upbringing of this terrorist? Which church he used to go? Which priests he used to listen to? Where is the entire interrogation of this person? And this is my concern. As much we appreciate the government, the Prime Minister, and the leaders of the community who are taking the discourse, a language to condemn this. Yes, condemning is the step one, but the matter doesn't end there. We need to see concrete actions. We need to lobby in order to make changes to curb these incidents from happening. Otherwise, it's a continuous practice, it's a regular practice. We will have to wait for another similar terrorist attack, another day, condemn it, go back to work, wait for another terrorist attack.
You're seeing that the majority of reports are not calling it a terrorist attack. You have one here, actually, that is saying alleged Christian terrorist who mowed down Muslim family was laughing as he got out of his blood-covered truck. You don't see many pictures of him floating around. You don't see like this picture here and a few of the others. Here's another picture of him.
Yep.
So that's interesting. And then we have this this report here that we can go ahead and get your reaction to.
Sure. That is, I think, one of the only. Sure. Okay, we'll go for the report. Yeah.
Okay.
Details around the suspect's life remain shrouded in mystery. I spoke to a number of his friends who live in this community who say they are in shock, but also in disbelief. They say they never had any inkling that their friend could allegedly be capable of carrying out such an atrocity.
I would never have believed that he could have done something like this at all. Anyone else I would have believed could do this, but Nate not at all.
Yeah, why do you say that?
It's just not his personality, like, at all. Like, this is quite a shock.
Armand Moradporian has known the suspect, Nathaniel Veltman, for several years and last saw him just 3 weeks ago. They worked together in the shipping department at this egg farm in the nearby community of Strathroy. London police visited the plant Tuesday afternoon. Moradporian's family is from Iran, and he was raised to be a Muslim, but says the suspect never appeared to take issue with that.
Like, he never, ever thought twice about Like, me and him were great friends. He helped me out a lot when I was going through a lot of rough stuff.
No one answered the door at his parents' home. Friends say he'd had a fight with his family and moved out a few years ago. His grandmother passed away on Friday. Moradporian says the suspect had been arrested before for public intoxication, but otherwise was a devout Christian who mostly stayed out of trouble.
He was a quiet, friendly, homeschooled Christian kid, literally.
And that is now a question for police investigators to answer. How does a so-called quiet, friendly Christian kid become an alleged mass murderer? We have scoured his social media accounts online and turned up very little. The accounts didn't have much in the way of content at all. Police say he had no criminal record, no known ties to any hate group, and at this point, Donna, they believe he was working alone.
So
Okay, Jeff Semple.
What's interesting here is that one is that we don't take this opportunity to like it's not like, you know, a game. Oh, now he's Christian. Now we're going to blame Christianity and use this. No, it's to point out the hypocrisy, because it's clearly, you know, something that was laid out that he's a Christian, and now what's the Christian community and the world at large is usually, like you were saying, happened. The perpetrator is somehow linked to being a Muslim, even though he's practicing Islam and goes against the teachings of Islam. It's exploited Mac. So we condemn groups such as Daesh, you know, Saint State, you know, and all these other fringe elements, but they pump them up as if they represent mainstream Islam. So where are the communities now to come out and to do, like you were saying, to call these individuals out who are within some of the Christian communities? They're in there, right? Some of these extreme elements. Like, I'll give you an example. You have, and it's not a small group. You have, like, for instance, in former Yugoslavia, you have the known Chechens. You know, did one of the greatest genocides after World War II. And this is where the person who gunned down in New Zealand, he was actually someone who was a fan of Radwan Karadzic and these war criminals, these terrorists. So this is something that they base their philosophy or theology. It's connected here. So what do you think when these double standards are so blatant?
Are you there? Yep.
We lost your camera.
Yes. Are you able to hear me, Eddie?
Your camera. We can hear, but we can't see you.
Yeah. Are you able to see me now?
No. We lost your camera.
Okay, just give me a sec. Are you able to see me now?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
There you go. You're back. You're back with us.
Yes. Yes, Eddie. So I think very important aspects that you just pointed out. That, you know, one of the articles that you just showed is from Independent, the newspaper, and it refers to the attacker, to the terrorist, as a Christian terrorist. Now, we're not saying that this is the right label. However, it is important to show this without any offense to our Christian friends, because this is exactly what the media has been doing with anyone sounding Muslim. They have always made sure that they call them Muslim terrorists. But now, when it comes to a non-Muslim, they may not refer to him as Christian terrorist. We don't agree with the label. However, if it was about labeling every terrorist by their faith, then this would have been the right title to call this terrorist as Christian terrorist. Let me bring out his name to you, which is Nathaniel Weltman. That's the terrorist, that's the truck driver who mowed down the 3 generations of Afzal family. In this attack, 4 people died and lost their lives, and the 5th person, a child of 9 years old, is battling with serious injuries in the hospital in Canada. Now, the second video that you showed, interestingly, the video portrays the interviews with one of his workmates, one of his colleagues, and one of his friends. And they all seem to portray that this was a peaceful person, this was a nice guy, and this was a person who had no ties to any terrorist groups or right-wing extremist groups or any process of radicalization. So in short, they're going to soon call him a lone wolf, meaning, look at this picture, a very fun-loving, simple person, doing fishing right at the corner of the river, at the edges of the river. What are they trying to portray? Where is the image of this bloody terrorist wearing the army dress, wearing an army helmet? That is how he attacked this family. There were people who pictured him. According to this article in Independent newspaper, it says that Nathaniel, who after attacking and killing, he went to a car park and stopped there behind a taxi, asked the taxi driver to ring the police and call them because he has murdered some people. And the taxi driver does say that he saw blood on the tires and the front of the car, of the truck. When the police came to take him out of the car, he was laughing. This terrorist was laughing when he was taken out. As the newspapers have reported, this was a premeditated, well-planned terrorist attack. Now, I'm not going to be accepting that this was a lone wolf who just woke up one fine morning and went out to kill somebody. This is not how it works in the field of terrorism. Let me quote you one of the terror experts, Professor Robert Pape, terrorism expert from University of Chicago. In his study of 25 years of terrorist attacks, he says that terrorists do attack, and their attacks may be linked to overseas incidents, military interventions, and geopolitical scenarios that may impact a person to do a terrorist attack. Now, I'm not linking this terrorist attack directly to one particular incident, but let's just see what has happened in the last couple of weeks and last couple of months globally. One of the things that has happened is the Palestine-Israel conflict, that you may call, or the genocide that Israel has been inflicting on the innocent indigenous Palestinians living in Palestine. We just saw that. All of this, I'm not saying this has got a direct link to that, but my point is, as Professor Robert Pape points out, terrorists do attacks for reasons that may well be beyond our borders. The thing is, this person is a Christian terrorist. What made him do this attack? They're going to call him a lone wolf, which we should disagree with. And we must raise our concerns and voice to find out his associates who radicalized him. He must definitely be watching somebody online. He must be talking to somebody online. He is listening to certain propaganda commentaries out there. So it begs the question, where is this ideology coming from? Let me point out a few things. The white supremacist ideology, the right-wing extremism, the nationalism, the religious fanatics. These are some ideologies to be named which are directly responsible for many of the terrorist attacks against Muslims. What are the reasons for this? If you look at the reasons, if you point out the reasons are constant Islamophobic language by the opportunistic politicians, by the tabloid media outlets, by propagandists such as journalists and media commentators. They are fueling this hatred, instigating violence. I refuse to call this terrorist Nathaniel Veltman a lone wolf. Rather, I call him a foot soldier. But the masterminds and the think tanks behind him are the real culprits. And they need to be accountable for being responsible for the radicalization of this person.
We have a few comments, many comments coming in. Here's one of them.
Yep.
How would you respond to this?
Yep. Well, we've got Stephen here who says, just convert to Christianism, then you will not have a problem in Canada. And do not forget, wear a cross, a visible cross, so Canadians will see you are Christian. Well, to Stephen, I say, appreciate his comment here. However, just to bring the truth and the facts to him, is this very person, Nathaniel Weltman, was a devout Christian, according to his close circle friends. He was a Christian, he was a man associated to God, and he was a young 20-year-old person. So being Christian is not going to defy him or anyone from committing a terrorist attack. Rather, I got to say, it might be the very reason for him attacking Muslims, because there is a lot of hate spewed within the Christian circles by the apologists, by the politicians, and by the Christian preachers. All of this does have an impact on a Christian who is listening to all of this. We got another comment by Muhammad Al-Mamari. He says, Christianity has nothing to do with individual behaviors. Media and political lobbies are the ones to blame for sure. Definitely, Brother Muhammad, appreciate your comment. That is exactly what we are saying as well. However, we're trying to point out the double standards, the hypocrisy of media outlets and politicians. When they see a terrorist who happens to be Muslim, they immediately label it as Muslim terrorism. But look at the honesty and sincerity of the Muslims. As Brother Muhammad just pointed out, we don't blame Christianity. Rather, we blame the language of hate. We blame the racism. We blame the politicians and the media's language. We got Muqeed Khan, who is saying mass murderer unfortunately sounds less dangerous than terrorism these days. They are carefully structuring their words for propaganda. Definitely agree with you, Muqeed Khan, for pointing this out. This is exactly what we are trying to raise right now, that the language needs to really be very specific. We can't get away by saying this is a hate-filled attack. This is a racist attack. This is an Islamophobic attack. Yes, it is, all of these, but it is important to call it a terrorist attack committed by an anti-Muslim Christian who may be influenced by the events and attacks taking place overseas, such as the attacks committed by the Zionists against the Palestinians, such as the attacks committed by the systemic racism by the states, by the governments, bombing Iraq and Afghanistan for years and saying that they are the enemies of Christians. This is what is bringing these terrorists and the violence to the streets of Western countries. Imani says these terrorist, racist people are planted and to start hate wars between the community. Well, that could very well be the case. However, I would say that these are possibly foot soldiers. These are people who are impacted by the anti-immigration rhetoric. These are the people who are impacted by the slamming, the constant Islamophobic stemming. And through this, these people are provoked, instigated, motivated to attack Muslims. This is how the hate takes place. This is how discrimination takes place in the society. This is how people go after innocent people and murder them because they think, or they are programmed and brainwashed to believe that someone's going to attack them.
So in concluding, again, we don't blame Christianity for the action of some Christians who might do some evil acts, and just like in this case, one who did. In the same way, you shouldn't go ahead and, I often repeat, try to blame Islam for the actions of some lunatic who does something totally against Islam. So this is very, very clear. Where are we moving forward from this?
Yes, Eddie, I think this is very, very important for all of us to see where do we go forward from here. As much our hearts are in pain, as much we are saddened by this horrendous attack, let us make sure that we know our steps to stop something similar from happening. Let me bring to you, this is not the first terrorist attack against a Muslim on Canadian soil. Let me just mention a couple. One of the biggest terrorist attacks that took place against Muslims in Canada was in January 2017 in Quebec City Mosque, which is popular as Quebec City Mosque Massacre. A gunman gunned down 6 people to death, and another 19 people were injured by firing inside the mosque while people were praying. This was one of the biggest terrorist attacks against Muslims in Canada, followed by another one in September 2020 in IMO Mosque, where the caretaker was murdered brutally with a knife attack in the car park of the mosque. Then just earlier this year, in March 2021, Black Muslim women were attacked in the middle of the street in Edmonton, in Alberta. And now we hear about this attack. My point here is, this is a series of attacks. This is not a one attack. This is not a lone wolf thing. This is not a one-off incident. This is in the making for years. And with all that the Canadian government is doing, why are they not able to stop such terrorist attacks? I'll tell you the reason. The reason is they are going after individual criminal, the individual terrorist, and they're charging him. Great. But they are not holding the people who are responsible, who should be accountable for using the language, for instigating, for provoking these foot soldiers. And I call these people as masterminds of the terrorist attacks. They are the ones who are spewing hatred in the discourse in the society, in the language that they speak, the opportunistic politicians and the media moguls. They are continuously speaking this language, which creates an environment of hate leading to violence. So Islamophobia is not just something that is about discrimination. Islamophobia is terrorism, and Islamophobia kills. So what needs to be done? We need to lobby, we need to raise our voice that the government, the intelligence departments, and the police departments, they should go after those who radicalize these people, those who spew the extremist ideology out there. It is only then they will be able to stop this terrorism called Islamophobia against Muslims.
Brother Waseem, thank you so much for spending some time with us and discussing this very important issue.
Jazakallah khair. Brother, just one point I would like to add, especially for our Muslim viewers, when such incidents take place, yes, on one hand, we become very depressed. And on the other hand, we do want to do something. But wait, what is our individual action? What do I do as an individual? How do I comprehend this whole scenario? When a Muslim is murdered or killed, we have the glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that if a person is killed for the sake of Allah, in the path of Allah, then they are considered as martyrs, as shuhada. And Allah says in the Quran, do not call them dead. They are living, for you do not know how their living is. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this Muslim family, which has faced the brutality, the evil face of humanity, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count them amongst the shuhada and raise their ranks in Jannatul Firdaus. About those who do these attacks, these terrorists, even if they get away with their crime in this world, my dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's judgment, his court is not going to spare them. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Nisa, Surah number 4, ayah number 93, and whoever kills a believer intentionally, his abode is hellfire forever. And Allah curses him, and the wrath of Allah will be upon him. And Allah is preparing a severe punishment for such terrorists, criminals, and murderers. Lastly, what do I do as an individual? Where do I go from here? What do I and you do in order to contribute to the peace of the society? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us in the Quran to convey the message of Islam. My dear brothers and sisters, Islamophobia, one of the ways to tackle it is to spread the teachings of Islam. Let me give you the warning that Allah gave in the Quran. In Surah Ma'idah, Surah number 5, ayah number 67, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises and warns the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhar Rasul, balligh, O Prophet, O Messenger, convey whatever has been revealed to you. If you do not convey, then you have not fulfilled the responsibility of conveying the message. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is advising the Prophet to make sure that he conveys the message of Islam, that is, does da'wah of Islam, then my dear brothers and sisters, I and you are also responsible for conveying the message of Islam to our fellow Canadians, to our fellow Americans, to our fellow Australians, to our neighbors, to our work colleagues, to our friends who are not yet Muslims. It is absolutely necessary that we utilize this opportunity and turn it into an opportunity for da'wah, for talking and teaching about Islam to one and all.
I think that's brilliant, taking that away for the community leaders in Canada, in America, in the UK, all over the world. What we've seen is that some of the most effective ways of connecting with the communities out there and dispelling many of the misconceptions, connecting people with Muslims, helping them understand Islam is education, open houses, open the masjids and invite the peoples, because you see a lot of these people who are capitalizing, and spreading misinformation, and this poisons the hearts and minds, and people have all these false images in their head and false information about Islam, which can cause them to react, in a way
Very true.
that leads to this.
Yeah, I think the Christchurch attack in New Zealand, after that, there were mosque open days. There were people who came to mosque, and subhanAllah, there have been reports of hundreds of New Zealanders embracing Islam. That is something that could be the consequence, that could be the result, that could be what is happening next after such terrorist attacks, if we Muslims could open the doors of mosques and our hearts for our fellow non-Muslim friends.
Increase the budget of Dawah. It's also a shame that you have in masjids, it's like 1-2%.
Yeah.
And this
True.
is something that is PR, is public relations. So
That's right.
it's very, very important. What would you say to the community leaders, the board members of masjids?
Yes.
Every masjid should have a Dawah committee.
Definitely.
And so much funds allocated to help educate people, share this message. What do you think about that?
I think very, very important, Brother Eddie, for raising that. And I think, obviously, we are all individuals, but I think as much we can communicate and convey to our leaders, to the mosque boards, that, they should assign a specific committee and budget in order to do dawah in each and every mosque. The mosque, a place of sujood, is an open door. Remember the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ had 3 Christian scholars visit him in Masjid al-Nabawi and stay there to talk about Islam. Imagine Masjid al-Nabawi, and he opens the door for the Christians to come and sit down and stay overnight to discuss about Islam. That is the zeal of da'wah that we should be having. One other point I just remembered, Eddie, is just to mention that in Canada right now, there are more than 300 attacks, Islamophobic attacks, that happened against Muslims between 2015 to 2019, according to one of the researchers. And 30 of those attacks were physical attacks against Muslims. There are more than 250 far-right extremist organizations operating on Canadian soil. When we talk about lobbying, these needs to be challenged. These needs to be banned. Yes, Canadian government has banned the Proud Boys after America did it. But is that the only organization that speaks or spews hatred? Not really. So we need to do 2 things. We need to do da'wah on one hand, and on the other hand, we need to look into the legality of the system and raise our voice for the leaders, for the politicians, to ban these outfits, these terrorist organizations, from radicalizing more or many of the Nathaniel Weltmans elsewhere.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us here on the Dean Show, my brother.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Allah barik fi.
I want to thank you all for tuning in here to the Dean Show, and do your part. Go ahead and share with your neighbors, share with your friends, share the Dean Show with everybody that you know, because that's what we're dedicated to, helping to clear the many misconceptions, delivering the truth to the people, and talk to your community members to open the masjids. You know, help to stop to implement some of these things that we're talking about. And if you are a not yet Muslim, if you're somebody who's tuning into the Dean Show, continue to tune in. Pick up a free Quran. We're going to have it on our website where you can go there to deanshow.com, and we'll have it mailed to you for free so you can see for yourself and learn for yourself what Islam and Muslims are all about. We'll see you next time. Until then, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. Support us on our Patreon page. We'll see you next time. Until then, peace be with you. Assalamu